Hello, everyone, and glad to see you. I was going to say glad to see you all, but glad that you all joined us because hopefully Vicki Dawson from the Sleep Charity, who is the founder of the charity, is going to give us. I think is it the answer to the elixir of youth, which is what sleep is all about now, isn't it?
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here and to be able to speak with you about sleep. And it is my sort of obsession at sleep, and I could speak all day about it, but I will try to be very controlled and not to do so.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I think sleep has become a more, apart from the weather, which is what we always chitter chat about, sleep is one of those other things, isn't it, that we all talk about, is about sleep. It's now risen from being, oh, it's just one of those things that our bodies did and we had to go and do, that I think the recognition of sleep in the last few years has just escalated, and it's now one of the top priorities. And I think as I always quote, quoting Dr. Ronan Chatterjee, but saying that was one of the foundations, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And if you're not getting good quality sleep, then there's all sorts of implications. And I think we've been probably somewhat unaware of that for many years. And certainly when I started the charity, which was back in 2012, there was much less awareness about sleep than there is now. And I think there's still a long way to go, don't get me wrong, in terms of people being able to access support when the sleep isn't as good as it could be. And generally in terms of awareness, so, educating people about sleep, youngsters in school about sleep. But you're absolutely right, it is like one of the absolute fundamentals in terms of our well-being, and when we're not getting enough, it has all sorts of knock-on effects like mental health, physical sort of implications, all kinds of things that I'd not actually realised until I didn't get any sleep myself. And that's where my interest came from, because I'd always, I guess, taken it a bit for granted. You just went to bed, you fell asleep, that was it. And actually, when it wasn't in my life, that's when I realised how enormous sleep deprivation, the enormous impact it could have.
Mm. So what we'd like to do today, I think, is well, first of all, hear about you and your story, how you set up the sleep charity. And then what we always try to do is talk about some practical things of what we can all do to maybe help sleep. And, but I think you're right, starting off, when you were saying about, if you don't suffer with lack of sleep, it doesn't cross your mind because it's just a natural thing, supposedly, for your body to do. And when it doesn't get so natural, that's when you start thinking about it. And obviously there's different reasons in our lives as to why we don't sleep. And I think for many of them, people, and I think this will suddenly go into your story, it's about having children as well, which kicks it off for many people. But anyway, over to you. Tell me about how you set up the sleep charity.
Yeah, so my background was actually in teaching, so nothing to do with sleep at all. And when I think back about that time when I was teaching, I was completely unaware about, the fact that children were not getting enough sleep. I was probably aware about that, but I had this simplistic view of, well, put them to bed earlier, because I could see that it was affecting concentration. And then you have your own child and you realize it's not that simple, and you kind of cringe at the information you've given to parents, in previous years. And my interest in sleep came from becoming a mother and finding that actually when you do need sleep information, sleep advice, there's not a great deal out there. And I mean, my son's nearly 21 now, so I'm going back, some years, but I wasn't quite sure what information to trust. And there seemed to be lots of information about like safe sleeping practice, but not actually about routine and how to do things and what to do when it went wrong. And I also found there's a lot of judgment about sleep with children. So, I might post on a parenting forum that I was having problems, and you then sort of got responses back that were either, well, just try doing this, as if it's such a simple thing to fix. And we get this with adult sleep as well. Just try having a milky drink and that'll sort it. Or there was a lot of judgment around actually wanting to address sleep issues. So, well, you just co-sleep with them and they'll just eventually sleep on their own. And yeah, lots of judgment about it. And I did try and get some support and some help, but there was just nothing available. I mean, the health visitor gave me a book to read. And at that point, I was working full time, probably getting 3-4 hours sleep max a night, interrupted sleep at that. And, even trying to read a book was virtually impossible. And the GP prescribed antidepressants. That was sort of the answer, just like a bit of a sticking plaster over the real issue. So I started to research sleep myself. I wanted to learn, as much as I could about it. And I wanted to have a go at making some changes. And for me, it was recognizing that what was going on in my life with my child was behavioral. So I'd been looking for probably a pill, some medicine, a medical reason for the sleep issues. And there wasn't one. It was a behavioural approach that was needed, which made perfect sense with my teacher head on, because that's what I did in the daytime. I looked for reasons why behaviours were occurring. I looked for then the strategies, whereas with the sleep, I'd gone in completely the opposite direction and I'd thrown loads of strategies at it, but I'd never actually unpicked what was causing it. And that's where my interest started. And once I'd done that and understood that and put everything in place, he started to sleep through the night. And I was going to say that it was amazing, but actually it was quite disturbing because I'd be waking constantly because my sleep was all out of sync, thinking, is he okay? Do I need to go in there? What do I do? I was really anxious about it because I'd had 6 years of, not having any sleep. But yes, he was perfectly fine and he's continued to sleep, perfectly ever since. And that's where my passion came from, because what I started to realize is there are a lot of families out there who had the same experience that I was having. And I wanted to try and prevent just one family from going down the dark path that sleep issues led me down. And I decided very naively, not knowing a great deal about charities at that point, I'll set up a charity and people will give me money and I can do good things. And it doesn't work quite like that, as I now know. So it's been another huge learning curve in terms of that. And last year, we decided to change the name of the charity. So we became the Sleep Charity rather than the Children's Sleep Charity. And that was because we also recognised so many adults who are having sleep issues, and quite often there's nowhere for them to go as well to receive information, support, or just to be listened to, because that's really powerful, actually having someone who listens and doesn't try and fix it but just hears how bad it is at times.
I think that's also it. Sometimes you just want to get it off your chest, don't you? Which I think is a lot with chronic conditions. And sleep deprivation, I assume, is a chronic condition.
Yeah.
And it is. It's just you don't always want somebody to say, "Oh, well, you need to do this, this, and this," which doesn't necessarily work. But you want someone just to listen to you in the first, to start out in the first instance, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that listening to people who've got sleep issues is just incredibly important, and it is often what doesn't happen. So if people do seek out help, they immediately get strategies suggested, and the problem is that the strategies often aren't going to be appropriate because there's not been a proper assessment taken place. So people then become almost like, I've just got to live with it because nothing is going to work. And the first starting point for us at the Sleep Charity is actually to listen. And every now and then the phone will ring, I will answer it, and someone will tell me all the problems around sleep. And it is really just hearing it and giving them space to talk about it and empathizing with that, but not trying to fix it. And they will usually draw those conversations to a close and say, you've been ever so helpful. Thank you so much. And put the phone down. I think I've not actually given you any strategies. You've just been heard. But sometimes if you are heard, you can start to see what you need to change as you're reflecting on it.
Mm, absolutely. And, having spoken to you the other day, I mean, that's where a lot of your funding goes into your telephone support, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So we have commissioned sleep services in some parts of the country which are for children. And it's frustrating because it's a postcode lottery. So it depends where families live as to whether they can access support. So my vision is to have a helpline that people can contact. That's what I want, so that they can get some expert information, advice, but so they can be listened to. So that's where we sort of fundraising around at the moment to get that in place. So the areas that we're able to offer support are quite limited, and again, this is why we try to sort of share information widely on our website so we can make sure people have got the information. But we also train professionals as well so that they can filter out our work on a wider level. And one of the things that I was completely unaware of when I was going through my sleep issues was that sleep is often something that professionals aren't trained in. So you may present with a sleep problem, requesting support and help, and there may have been no training in that particular professional's background around it, which I find really shocking,
Um,
because I just presumed that it was there.
so, I mean, do you know, do GPs get trained in it? Is that part, do you know, or is there some specific areas that don't seem to be trained, or just across the board?
Yeah, it seems to be quite patchy in terms of where the training is. I remember a few years ago, we launched a basic sleep workshop for professionals working with children. And I had a number of health visitors sign up for that. Now, as a parent, a health visitor would be the first professional that I would think of to go to for sleep support. And I actually called them and said, "You've signed up for a basic workshop, but this is like basic level." And I was so shocked. And they said, "We've not had any training around it." So, that presumption that I had was completely wrong. Um, I do get to go to some universities now and do some lecturing for postgraduate medical students. And again, they will say that they've not had any sleep input until this point.
Wow.
And yeah, and education as well. So I've also done lecturing around education at postgraduate level. So this was particularly in the early years, and sleep was not on the programs yet. Actually, if youngsters are sleep deprived in education, we know that they're not going to meet the full potential.
Mm, absolutely. And it shows how the momentum is building. So, we were just talking about the last time we met was in March when you were we were all at Westminster, sort of shouting the banner about sleep, and you had the Mental Health Foundation there. So there were some big organisations and some prominent people there supporting your cause.
Yeah, so we launched our manifesto. It was the 4th of March. It
Oh,
seems
wow.
forever ago now.
It
Uh,
does.
yeah, and we'd been working really hard on it, so that we could get a real campaign going about sleep, because I'm really passionate that if people have got sleep issues, they need to be able to access support at the earliest opportunity, because they can quite often become worse and more deeply entrenched, and it can have a devastating impact on every area of life. Thinking about mental health, there's lots of links between sleep deprivation, anxiety, depression. It can impact on relationships. It's just enormous, even like safety, and it's got that wider impact in terms of road traffic accidents. It can not just affect your family, but you could be the victim of someone who's sleep deprived who's actually driving. So I wanted to really bring that to the government's attention, because we need sleep to be on the public health agenda. Children need to be educated about sleep. Families, individuals who are having sleep issues need to be able to access education, because we need to empower people with knowledge so they can understand why they may be having the difficulties and what practical tips they can put in place to help them. And we need that training for professionals too, so that when they are giving information out, they feel confident that the information they're giving is based on the latest research, that it is actually high quality information. So yeah, that launched on the 4th of March, and we were hoping to follow that up by establishing an all-party parliamentary group. Unfortunately, that's not happened because of the pandemic. So it is frustrating, but we've got plans to continue with that as soon as we can, because this is affecting so many people. I mean, statistically, it's 40% of the adult population have got a sleep issue, which is enormous, and we've seen it rise during the pandemic as well.
Well, you must let us know about the parliamentary groups, because we have been involved in a couple of them, and they really can force through change. And I think that's really important, that us as sort of individuals can realise that we can go to Westminster, we can actually pressurise, and we can make things happen. And we were involved in the mesh, I don't want to say scandal, but, for want of a better word, the mesh scandal, and, a couple of other things. And it is really important that we can get a groundswell of people, and you really can make a difference. So, yeah, so please let us know, and then we'll absolutely let everybody on the Talk Health platform know about it as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And I mean, the thing about sleep is it sort of encompasses so many different areas as well. So you've got like the mental health, but then you've got all sorts of individualized areas. So I've spoken to a number of other charities this week, like eczema charity, for example, and the common thing is that the sleep there as well, sleep issues in sort of every different field. Like I've worked with this week, adults who've got a diagnosis of autism, sleep issues are there as well. So we talk about like sleep experts, but actually we're the experts on our own sleep, because we all do it so differently. So it's really important that we do come together so that we are stronger, and that we are inputting all the different sort of beneficiaries or potential beneficiaries of our work.
And absolutely, I mean, we've spoken a lot about how sleep can affect children and their development. And then the flip side is trying to do your best with sleeping habits as you get older to stop potential problems with dementia, because we know that dementia can worsen due to lack of sleep. So it's across, all ages. It's a very important aspect of your health to pay attention to, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah. And the thing about sleep is it changes as well as we get older. Sleep patterns don't just stay the same. There's all sorts of different changes that take place, and changes that take place while we are asleep as well. So thinking about sort of newborn babies and the fact that they have like lots of REM sleep, which is like the light sleep, the old flickering eyelids, but then as we get older that diminishes and diminishes, and we need less of that. And thinking about adolescence, when we become night owls and find it harder to fall asleep, and then sort of lying in the morning, and then moving through life. I'm thinking particularly for ladies, like menopause, the hormonal changes that can impact on sleep. So sleep does change over periods of time, and we need to be able to understand the changes that are happening to us, so that we know as well what is normal. Is this what I should be expecting? It's that understanding and educating people around it, because it does affect right from the cradle all the way up through our lives. And if we can get good sleep in place, I like the term, it helps us meet our full potential. Whatever stage of life you're at, if you're not getting the best sleep you can get, it's hard to be the best version of yourself, because you're going to be forgetting things, your emotions can be all over the place. It can impact on immunity. Your immune system becomes compromised, every single area. And I try to flick it the other way as well. So rather than thinking about sleep as, if you don't get enough, all these dreadful things are going to happen, I try to think about sleep as actually, if we can improve it, all these amazing things are going to happen. You're going to look better, you're going to feel better, you're going to feel happier, calmer, because we often feel quite hyperactive, jittery, anxious if we don't get enough sleep. So I do try to change it to the positives. Yeah.
I think,
Go
yeah, and I think what we've established is, you know, how sleep does change through the years, and also just how important is it. I think if people understand how important it is to your health, then people can start really taking it on board and looking at their sort of their sleep habits.
Yeah, and we don't prioritize it. You know, we will do things like think, I'm not going to have a nap because that washing up needs to be done. But actually, if your body is telling you that you are tired and you need to rest, how important is that compared to doing the washing up at that moment in time? Or we will sleep deprive ourselves for pleasure. We will think, I'll not go to bed, I'll watch the end of this series on whatever station it might be. And you might be nodding off, but you'll force yourself to watch it. And I always think about my cat, because my cat, well, all cats love sleep. And I always think, you know, would a cat do that? I know a cat wouldn't think I'm not going to go to sleep because I've got to go out now and catch mice or whatever. Ridiculous. They just listen to the bodies. And animals do. But human beings, we go, right, we'll just push the fact that we're tired to one side and we'll keep going, going, going. And the difficulty as well that I think we've got around that is that there's this like 24/7 society now. So, you know, when I was growing up, there was nothing to watch, nothing to do. It was boring. The TV stopped. And I remember they started breakfast TV, and that was revolutionary, that you could get up and watch something at 6 a.m. Whereas now there's just stuff streamed all the time. We've got technology coming in at us, messages, and it's easy to get absorbed into it and to forget about how important it is to get you sleep.
Definitely. So it's just looking through some of the things that we said we would cover. And one of them was the impact of pain on sleep, you know, and our sleep quality, because it's not just obviously about, you know, are you asleep? It's the quality which is really important. And, you know, our members, you know, obviously we specialise in chronic health, and pain is a big part, regardless of what symptoms you might have. Pain is quite often I was going to say one of the backbones of the, you know, the things that you have to deal with every day. Is there anything that you would suggest that can help on things like that?
Yeah, it's so tricky with pain, because if we are in pain, it can disrupt sleep, obviously, because it's one of the things that can wake us up, or it can make it hard to fall to sleep at the start of the night. So it's the thing with sleep is it's so individual. So what one person will find helpful, another person may not. And I think it's around acknowledging that, because people are always looking for these 5 top tips, and actually you can't give them, because what you've got to look at is each individual case, and then start to draw out how that person sleeps, so what their sleep preferences are, what their needs are in terms of comfort. And when we're thinking about pain, it might be that we need to look at pain management. So it may be that it's more like going back down the healthcare route. It might be that we can look at other things that can be done in the run up to bedtime to help with that pain. So, you know, does having a bath help with the pain? Does having like massage? I get a lot of pain in my back and my leg, and I've got like a massage gun that I bought, and it really helps to use that at night time, because that pain can stop me from sleeping at times. So that's a strategy that I've found helpful for me. And it's also looking at what we're sleeping on, you know, in terms of the bed and pillows. And again, you know, there's lots of preferences around that. So some people prefer firmer mattresses, others softer. It might be that using a pillow between your legs, for example, helps to take some of the pressure off, and that's helpful. It could be certain types of pillow are helpful. It's kind of experimenting with what is comfortable and what helps to reduce that pain for you. And I think it as well, as much as I hate to say it, because I like to think, yeah, we can help with all sleep issues. If you're in pain, actually you just need to get up at that point. And I sometimes do this, if I'm woken up with my back on my hip and it's really bad, there's you can become really anxious about lying there waiting for sleep to happen, and you can't control sleep. I think this is a really important message. We try to force ourselves to get to sleep because we think, oh, I've got to get up in the morning, I'm going to be exhausted, and we give all these negative messages to ourselves, and then it makes it even harder to fall asleep. So sometimes, for me personally, it's about, I'm not going to get to sleep because this really hurts right now. I need to just get up. It is rubbish. And I might just go get a drink, have a little walk around. That sometimes helps me, and try again when I'm feeling that actually it could happen. I'll change position even. I've found myself in the chair. I've got like a recliner chair that sometimes just takes the pressure off a little bit for my pain. So it is just thinking about outside the box sometimes, and yeah, it's not going to happen because of this, and I just need to get up. And I think that's the same with anxiety as well, getting anxious about, I'm not getting to sleep, clock watching, getting up and maybe just sitting in a quiet space that's dimly lit, maybe just reading a book until feeling that sleep might happen, because we want to build an association with the bed and with sleep. And if we're not careful, we can build an association with the bed, and it can be more around anxiety, stress, than actual relaxation.
And I mean, I know that whenever I can't sleep, and I'm not a great sleeper, is I always try not to worry. I mean, easier said than done, not to worry about it and accept it. And I know that acceptance is one of the big key things to accepting. If you're not a great sleeper, don't fight it, accept it, as opposed to feeling so, which does make yourself more anxious, which is exactly what you're saying, isn't it? And then it sort of starts snowballing your anxiety. But I think also the message that's come through from you is very much, whereas I think we're so used to saying, right, tick box, this is how you get better sleep, tick, tick, tick. And what you're saying is, no, everybody is different, and try and listen to your own body and what your own body naturally needs and is looking for.
Yeah. When I give talks, people will sort of go, that won't work for me, that won't work for me. And it's like, no, it probably won't. It's taking the bits that will work. So it's understanding the fact that we do sleep in cycles. It's not just like you fall asleep and you stay asleep all night and you wake up. We're dipping in and out of these sleep cycles all night, going through different stages. And everyone's got different sleep needs in terms of how much sleep they need. And we get sort of hooked on, oh, I must have like 7 hours sleep, and if I've not had that much sleep, it needs looking at. It's how you feel. So actually, is that enough sleep for you? And if it is, that's fine. You sort of can't force sleep. So it's very much an individualized approach, and it's moving away from the number of hours as well. And it's like you said, it's the quality. So you could have 10 hours sleep a night, but actually the quality is awful because you just keep waking up constantly, in and out of sleep, and it's fragmented. So we've got to go back to thinking about our own individual sleep, what we need to get to sleep, what we like in terms of the environment. And it's the whole picture really about diet, what we're eating, what we're drinking, because it all affects sleep. Temperature regulation, that's a key part of it. And sort of unpicking all these different areas to then be able to identify strategies that might be helpful for us. And I always say to people, when I talk about strategies, the ones that I talk about and you think that won't work, completely ignore. You need to pick out the ones that you think, actually, I've not thought of that. That could be useful. Because this is basically about changing behaviour. And changing behaviour is hard work. It's easier to stay as we are and go, I've just got a sleep problem. It's just how it is. Because what you can find is when you start to change things, you can almost start to resist it. And this is where our work really comes in. And the research that we've done with children shows that actually what people need is coaching along. So they need somebody who's going to phone them up, a sleep practitioner, and go, how's it going? And someone who can listen to them, but also celebrate success, because you don't see your successes, and keep them going. And I liken that to things like, you know, if you join a weight control group and you've got to go and get on those scales every week, it's a bit like that with the sleep practitioner stuff. You know, you can have someone going, which bits have you done? You know, how are you getting on? And it sort of moves you forward a little bit with it, rather than just going, yeah, I've got a sleep issue, but there's nothing I can do.
Actually, the more we talk about it, the more I kind of think, you know, and then you started talking about diet and all, you know, and then what people's work is and all those things. And I've got so many questions. So, by the way, please ask your questions now. At the bottom, you can, I think it says where it's Q&A, you can add your questions. So we'll come on to your questions in a minute. But I was trying to think what I was sort of going to say. I mean, when people, I mean, and obviously there's certain different types of, you know, there's sleep apnea and all those different, you know, then we can go into all of those things. But people often talk about going to a sleep clinic. I mean, what does a sleep clinic do? I have no idea.
Yeah, with the sleep clinic, they'll do an assessment around what the sleep difficulties might be, and some of them might be around the work that we do, which is like more the behavioural CBTI, it's called. So, you know, looking at changing routine, sleep hygiene, assessing diet, assessing bedroom environment, that kind of thing. But they will also look for medical sleep disorders, and this is something that we are sort of trained to filter out. So the staff at the sleep charity aren't healthcare professionals, but what we do is we pick up if there is something that we think needs to be looked at from a medical point of view. And you mentioned like obstructive sleep apnea, so that is one of the things, which is sleep disordered breathing, so usually characterised by snoring, and it's the pauses in the breathing that are cause for concern. So if someone's got obstructive sleep apnea, they'll probably snore, but then they'll sort of do the old snorting, waking themselves up business, and are likely to be very sort of sleepy during the daytime as well, because they're not getting the quality of sleep at night time. They might look at things like restless leg syndrome, so where the legs are moving a lot at night
Oh, that's a
time.
really common problem, isn't it? I know some friends of mine have, and they're just jumping all over the place.
Yeah, we get it, you know, lots of those sorts of cases, and there is the link with iron deficiency around that.
Oh,
So
right.
we'll talk to people about, you know, maybe just go and get your iron levels checked, because it is difficult one to treat, you know, warm baths, sort of leg massages, but it is tricky to treat it. But also tricky to fall asleep if your legs are sort of jumping around all over the place. So yeah, they will sometimes do overnight sleep studies where they will take people into the sleep laboratories and wire them up with various sensors, and that will produce lots of data so that they can have a look and see what levels of sleep they're getting into, what different stages they're getting into, whether there are any apneas, and also look at the movement during the sleep. And I think it's probably a good point then to just talk about things like Fitbits, because people often think that if they wear a device at night time, they can get similar results. So I get a lot of anxiety calls about the fact that a watch has told them that they're not getting enough sleep. Like, please do not sort of interpret that data and be anxious. These sleep units have got a whole host of equipment and experts who are looking at the data. It's nothing like a Fitbit, which works on the movement alone. So I would say get rid of your watch at night time, because it's just going to probably make you more anxious. So there's usually.
I was just going to say that. There's so many apps now, aren't there, about, you know, looking at your sleep to track it. I mean, do you think they're credible, or do you think, as a generalisation, they make you more worried than the good they do?
Yeah, I see a lot of anxiety around them. So when people say to me, I don't get enough sleep, or I'm worried about my sleep, I say, tell me why. And when they start to say, you know, the watch told me so, the app told me so, I'm like, well, let's just forget about that and let's think about how you feel. So how, are you feeling sleep deprived? Are you falling asleep during the daytime? How do you feel when you wake in the morning? Do you feel like you need to go back to sleep, even like half an hour later? So it's looking at those sorts of signs rather than trying to rely on that kind of technology to be able to tell you. So I think they can be quite anxiety provoking. I had somebody just the other week say that I just didn't, I appeared to be dead on my watch. Well, you weren't, clearly. So just do not worry about it. Get rid of the watch.
Yeah, no, we shouldn't rely on. I mean, I'm a great believer in listening to your body yourself, as opposed to what other external mechanisms are necessarily telling you what your body's saying. So that would be a very good example, is don't listen to your watch or whatever app, isn't it? Just very quickly before we go on to, because people are starting to post questions, one of the things, and we always end up talking about it, is vitamins and supplements and things like that. Is there anything that you would recommend for sleep in particular?
Magnesium has been sort of bandied about as being helpful in order to sort of aid relaxation. It's not an area that we go into. We would be saying, if you think that you need to look at vitamin supplements, then perhaps you ought to be looking at blood tests and seeing if you are deficient in anything. One of the things that we do talk about though is light, and I'm thinking, of like the vitamin D stuff there. So we talk an awful lot about using light, because light and dark have really important cues for our body. So when it is dark, our bodies produce the sleep hormone, which is called melatonin, and that's the hormone that helps you to feel sort of tired and ready to nod off. And in the daytime, our bodies suppress that hormone, so we need natural light in order to do so. So I will talk to people about when they get up in the morning, if they can, sitting by a window or getting out for half an hour for some natural daylight. So that helps to keep their body clock on track. And of course, we don't always get great daylight in the UK. But you can use light boxes as well. So, the light boxes that they use for SADs. So you can put a light box on for half an hour in the morning, and that can help you as well to regulate your body clock. So, yeah, light
Okay,
and dark is a good one.
Right, I am now going to read some of the questions. Right, my 10-year-old child cannot sleep alone in his room. He needs other people in the room in order to sleep through the night. What can be done to make him sleep alone?
Yeah, that's a real common one. So a bit of sort of sleep education to start with. So like I said earlier, we sleep in cycles. And what happens is at the start of the night, we sort of gradually start to fall asleep, and we're going to a really light sleep, which we call stage 1 sleep. And while we're in this really light sleep, it's really easy to get woken up. So if you are staying with a child and you think, yes, they've gone to sleep, and you start to do the whole commando crawl out the bedroom, and they go, where are you going? How did they know? Well, that's how they knew. It's because they were in stage 1 of sleep. So you need to wait until they're in a bit deeper sleep to be able to successfully escape. And then what happens is we go down to stage 2 and stage 3. So stage 3 is a really deep sleep, and it's hard to be woken up from that sleep. So that's the stage where people will carry children from like the sofa to upstairs and they won't wake up. We then come right back up and we come to what we call points of partial awakening. So if everything's the same as when we fell asleep at the start of the night, we might just roll over and we won't even remember it. Sometimes we do remember it, so you might like glance at the clock and think, oh, it's 2 o'clock, that's great. Or you might do the whole like, I need a week and I'll last till the morning thing. But generally speaking, you'll just not really remember it. The problem we've got with children who need someone to fall asleep with them at the start of the night is it can become a sleep association. What I mean by that is we all need certain things to fall asleep well, some people don't. Some people just could fall asleep anywhere quite easily. But for most of us, we need certain conditions in place. And that might be one pillow, two pillows, complete darkness, a bit of light coming in, whatever. Quite often for children, it becomes a parent, and they need that parent there to fall asleep at the start of the night. And parents usually try and tiptoe out and disappear. But then when they come up through the sleep cycles, they can't go back to sleep because you are their sleep association. Bit like if you sleep with a partner next to you in bed, and if they get up to go to the bathroom when you're in stage one, you will go, where are you going? I was just nodding off. If they disappear when you're sort of a bit further down the cycle, you'll not know that they've gone. But when you come up to this point of partial awakening, you're much more likely to wake up and think, where have they gone? And it depends how much you like them, whether you go find them or not, or you just enjoy having all that space. So I always try to liken it back to our own sleep, and then go, oh yeah, actually I get that. I get why like they can't do it. So I think the question was about how to get them to do it, was it? Yeah. So what I would say is this, this is up to you really. This is about parenting style. And sometimes I have done work with families where we've actually put the parent in the child's room as a starting point. So don't even try and leave them right now. If they're used to sleeping with you in your room, you sleep with them in their room so that we can get them used to that environment, like baby steps. There's also something called gradual retreat, whereby you stay with them in the room, and when they wake in the night, you have to go do the same. That's tough. And you've got to try not to fall asleep yourself, but consistently taking them back to bed, waiting for them to fall asleep. And then what you do is you gradually move it a little bit further away. So, you know, if you're lying on the bed, you get to sitting on the bed, you get to sitting on the floor, and then gradually moving it out of that room so that you're teaching them to be able to fall asleep in the room by themselves. There's also a technique called rapid return, which is not as gentle, but you put them to bed, you wait outside the door, and then you just keep going back in to reassure them. You know, I'm here, it's sleep time, back out again. That's harder work, and it just depends on your child and what you think is best, really.
Next question. I fall asleep early, wake up about 10 and go for a walk, have something to eat, try and go back to sleep, and it is often between 3 and 4 when I get back to sleep. I've tried putting the TV on and reading, but still awake. I usually then sleep till about 8, and I'm quite tired all day. I try not to nap. Is that right? So I think what this person's saying is that, you know, it's up and down, basically, with their sleep pattern.
Yeah, and it can be up and down. What our bodies thrive on is routine. So if we can get like really set sleep times, that does help. In terms of not napping, that's a difficult one. That's a tricky one, because I'm a fan of napping if it's at the right time, because our bodies naturally have a bit of a slump around about this time, actually. You know, it's a long time to be going throughout the day. If we're feeling naturally tired, a sort of short nap at this point can help to boost you back up, can help to make you feel better. But what we've got to be mindful of is a sleep drive. So let me explain about sleep drive. We wake up in the morning, and I always think about it like our battery. Our sleep battery should be full. I know not everybody's is at the moment, but it should be full. You should feel like, yeah, I've had my sleep, I feel good. And then as you go through the day, your battery sort of gets depleted. And if you have a nap, it tops your battery up a little bit, and you want to just top it up a little bit, not enough for it to be full, because then what will happen is your bedtime will come along and you've not built that sleep drive up. We need your battery to be sort of empty again in order for you to be able to get in bed and fall asleep easily. So a nap can be good, and I would just say that it needs to be like round about this time, and a short nap, so that it doesn't have a knock-on effect on your nighttime sleep.
Brilliant. This is interesting. So does magnesium help you sleep? So we've discussed that. In the answer is we think it does. If so, when is the best time to take it?
So the research, last time I looked at research on magnesium, it wasn't great. There was like, some links with it may aid relaxation. And there's different ways that you can take it. So I'm no expert at all on magnesium, but the ways that I have seen and heard people talking about successfully is salts, in a bath.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, that you can get like magnesium salts, and people have said that they can be useful. The difficulty is you read sort of academic research, and I always listen to real life people as well. So there's research out there about all kinds of different things, and it sort of says, it's not particularly helpful, but then I hear people going, it really helped me. And if someone's saying it helped them, I think, it's something that's worth exploring and looking at. So I've seen that there's magnesium sprays that you can get as well, as in like sprays for your body, creams. So I would just explore what's out there, and read about it and see whether you think it's something that could be helpful for you to try.
Okay. Is passion flower helpful for sleep?
I don't know. I've got no idea. That's a new one for me, but I'm going to write it down now. I'll know by the end of this afternoon. So passion flower, okay.
What
I
about
shall look.
what about reading before you go to sleep? I can go many nights when I read, put my book down to try to fall asleep and fail. So I read again and go on for some hours like this.
Yeah, again, an individual one. So some people go, I read a few pages, I fall asleep, and they find it helpful. Other people find reading before bed not helpful, because it might be that it actually can make them more engaged. It can light up your imagination. You can get really into the characters. I mean, I had to stop reading Harry Potter books. How ridiculous is that? Because I couldn't put them down. But when I put them down, I was having the most vivid dreams about owls and all sorts. I was like, this is not helping me at all. So I've never read Harry Potter, much to my disappointment. So I think it's very personal again, and if it's not helpful, what I would suggest is, does the person say whether they're reading in bed or just before bed?
They're reading. I think they're reading in bed.
Yeah, so I might be tempted therefore to not read in bed, but read as part of your wind down routine. So we always look at like the hour before bed as being like the part that you need to plan, as in, what am I going to do that helps me to feel relaxed and calm? And like tips around this are dim the lights so that you're producing this melatonin. Maybe have a bath if you find that helpful. And think about the activities that help you to feel calm, and reading could be one of them. Fine motor skill activities are usually pretty good, so crafty type stuff, like colouring, painting, knitting, sewing, anything like that can help people to feel calm. So do it then, and then maybe leave your book downstairs and go upstairs, do your like bathroom routine, get into bed, ready for sleep. I would suggest trying that.
Oh, just very quickly, the person who put about passion flower, I really need to put my glass on. Passion flower tincture helps my sister and my husband, but not me and my mother. So it's obviously is one of those things, helps some people and maybe not another. Next question. I feel as though I sleep excessively. What could be the potential causes, and how can I help myself with this? But I suppose I don't know what the definition of excessively is. Maybe 10 hours?
Yeah, well, some people do sleep excessively, and it does warrant some investigation as well as to why is that, what's going on around that, and there can be a whole manner of reasons. So what I would suggest is actually speaking to a medical professional about it, and I would, if you can, try to keep some sleep diaries so that you can quantify what excessively looks like for you. So you can say, this is a 2-week period, and these are how many hours I've slept each day. And it's also useful to talk about how you feel when you wake up. So do you feel refreshed, or actually do you still feel tired? But yeah, it could definitely be worth looking at. And there can be all sorts of reasons. And I kind of don't want to throw ideas out there, because then it can alarm people. But again, it could be something like simple, like iron deficiency, that kind of thing. But it really ought to be looked at.
That's really interesting what you're saying is about throwing out too many ideas, because I think the trouble is when you plant an idea, especially with something, it's not as if with sleep you can go and have a a blood test and then that's it, tick, you've been diagnosed with this. It doesn't work like that, and it's very clear, it's very individual for everyone. And the next person is which I'll read, and it's quite a long one. And one thing she says is, I think too much info can be damaging, and I think that's absolutely right as well, because it's very easy to read something and go, I've got that, which is one of the big problems with the internet, as we know. But let me read this person's. I'm not sure it's just a question, I think it's just a comment really. I've been an insomniac all my life. It never bothered me, as I didn't feel tired in the morning and didn't think about it. I functioned fine. However, as you say, there's so much more info and publicity about sleep and how bad it is not to get it, and all the issues for mental health and dementia. My mum had dementia, although she was a great sleeper. The result of all this is that sleep has now become a big issue for me. I've gone from having 3 to 4 hours to 2 or none. Although I function, I really worry about dementia or long-term health. I think too much info can be damaging. I never had an issue with it till it became highlighted as an issue, and I just want to go back to accepting I need very little. And I think that sort of says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said in the beginning about actually, yeah, we can see this research that's coming out, and it can be quite scary if you sort of read it, and that makes you feel anxious, and then you can't sleep. And that's why I prefer to look at the positives around sleep and to put it in those sort of ways. And the fact that it is such an individual thing, we need to really just think about how we feel, and if that is good enough for us, rather than being like fixated on the amount of hours. And people do need variable amounts. It's I always try to liken it to other things, and sometimes the things I liken it to are ridiculous, but things like eating, and because someone's 40 years old doesn't mean that they're all going to need the same number of calories, because everyone's body is different. We all function differently. Not every 10-year-old is going to be in a size 4 shoe, because we're different, we're individual. So not every adult is going to need this set amount of sleep. And it is how you feel on that. And just try to ignore all those stats, all that research. If you're feeling good on it, then that's what's important. And I think it's around managing those anxieties as well, because what happens is if you can't sleep, you then focus more on it, and it builds it into a bigger problem. So like for me, I literally get in bed and go to sleep because I'm a relatively good sleeper. But there's been periods in my life where I've not been a good sleeper, and I think we've got to normalise that as well. Particularly at the moment during the pandemic, there's lots of anxiety, there's lots of change in routine, there's more screen time, and that has an impact on our brains, but also the light dark stuff. We're getting light from screens. We might not be exercising as much as we used to. Lots and lots of change, and as a result that will impact on sleep. And some people's sleep has improved because they may not have to go to, I don't know, like do a stressful drive in the morning to work or whatever. But a lot of people's sleep has got worse because they're out of that routine, and it is saying that is normal. That will happen, and we will have periods in our life where we experience things and it affects our sleep. What we need is tools in our toolkit to get it back on track. And with that particular scenario, we can really identify why. So there's a lot of anxiety there about, mum who's got dementia and actually fearful of, is this going to create it? And what I would say is it sounds like you just don't need much sleep. You were absolutely fine before. It's trying to manage that anxiety now and go to bed when you're tired, so that you build up that association with bed and sleep again, rather than laying there trying to force it, because you can't force it. And look at ways of, even if you are in bed and you're not sleeping, actually look at ways of thinking positively about that. My body's resting. This is good. My body's resting for tomorrow. Okay.
Definitely. Right. Well, thank you everyone for all your questions. And obviously I have to do a plug because we do have a sleep program. We've had thousands of people go through it, and I think it gives lots of helpful information, and it absolutely directs people to the sleep charity and to other areas for you to consider and have a look. So please do go and have a look at our sleep program, and obviously go and visit Vicki's website, because I know there's loads of great information on there, because we've got some information on there as well, I think, so clearly great. And yeah, Vicki, that's really interesting. And I think the thing that I've taken home, or the one big thing, which is actually the thing that you said at the start, and what, you know, what a lot of your really important work about, is just listening to people talk about their issues. And I think, you know, quite often when you do let people have the space to talk about it, they start figuring it out for themselves.
Absolutely, yeah. You're the experts in yourself, and just listen to your body, but also, you know, allow people to talk about it. It's so, so important.
Mm. So anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Oops, I hope I haven't lost everybody. Sorry, I think I did something with the screen then. It all just went all horribly wrong there. So yeah, thanks very much, everybody, for joining us, and look forward to hopefully seeing you again soon. And thank you once again, Vicki. It was great.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.